Welcome to the Buick Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Sheldon Marion, and on this podcast, we dive deep into the outdoors. We discuss hunting and fishing techniques, give you tips and tricks, tell stories, and everything in between to help you enjoy the outdoors. This podcast is brought to you by Northbound Gear. Northbound Gear is designed for maneuverability and durability and is made to last through even the toughest of elements. My go-to for their pants is the water resistance adventure pants and their lined waterproof jeans. I've worn them while out ice fishing, crawling through the woods bear hunting, and on the west coast out on the boat. And I even wear them around when I'm having a lazy day at the house. They are that comfortable. They also offer jackets, summer pants, backpacks, and many more. Men's and women's sizes are available, and by partnering with One Tree Planted, you're planting a tree with every purchase. Check them out for yourself at northboundgear.co, and when you use my promo code Sheldon15 at checkout, you'll receive 15% off your order. That's northboundgear.co and promo code Sheldon15. This podcast is brought to you by Rampage Coffee. Rampage Coffee is crafted in micro batches to produce a premium quality coffee that is just not possible any other way. Step up your coffee game and get amped with premium quality freshly roasted coffee. Right now I'm waiting on the sampler bundle where you get to try all 4 blends for around $20. It comes with a full force premium espresso, Code Black dark roast, Riot medium roast, the C4 extreme caffeine blend, and it also comes with some pretty cool looking stickers. If you head over to rampagecoffee.com and use our promo code Buick, you'll receive 10% off. That's rampagecoffee.com, promo code BUICK to get 10% off and get amped with Rampage Coffee. Well, welcome back to another Buick Outdoors podcast. Springtime, it's pretty well here. It's right around the corner. And so with that comes our syrup season. Up here in the north, we don't necessarily have maple trees that we can tap, but we do have birch trees. And, it's generally pretty well the same thing. Like the kind of short and sweet thing of it is, you tap a tree by drilling a hole into the side of the tree. You put a tap in it. You hang a bucket underneath your tap. You collect the sap that comes out. Then you boil down the sap so you get rid of all the water in it. And then pretty well what you're left with is just the natural sugars. For me, I've been doing it for quite a few years here now. And when I started, I didn't have a drill. I didn't have any taps. Didn't have buckets. What I used was just red Solo cups, a knife, a couple of thumbtacks, and a roll of tape. And so if you're curious on how to get started and you just want to kind of go out and give it a try just to, get a cup of syrup, it's a very, very easy thing that you can start and do on your own. And it's just another way to get out into the woods. For me, what I did when I first started is once you find like a nice little stand of birch trees, I'd go out and I'd take my little red Solo cup and I'd tack it to a tree, or to a birch, and then I would take a small piece of duct tape, maybe about 4 inches long, and pretty well tape it to the inside rim of your red Solo cup, and then tape it to the tree. Or what you can do to help funnel it a little bit better is you tape it to the tree first, and then it kind of creates like a natural V almost into the cup. And then I would take my knife, and with just the tip of the knife, I'd stab it just slightly above the tape, and I'd go maybe a 1/4 of an inch deep, and I'd kind of stab it twice, so it would make like kind of like a V notch. And then when you do that, you get the inside bark layer where all the sap kind of runs up the tree. And once as you cut that V, the sap just kind of runs out of your V cut. It runs down the tree trunk, hits your tape, and then drips down into your red Solo cup. And that's basically how I got started. There's good and bad ways, good and bad things about doing it that way. The good is that it's extremely cheap. For a few bucks, you have all the equipment and gear that you need to start tapping trees. The bad part is a lot of the times, the tape doesn't necessarily stick too good to the tree, or it sticks really good, but the sap, it'll find just a little seam where it can kind of work its way behind the tape, and then the sap just runs all the way down the tree. And then you're kind of watering itself, kind of a deal. But you end up missing out on quite a bit of sap. Uh, the good thing though is when you're doing that, when it comes to tapping the trees, it's quick, it's easy. When it comes to collecting the sap, what I do is I'll just bring like a 5 gallon bucket with me, and I try to peel the tape off the cup, but I don't peel it off the tree because once you break that seal, the tree is just constantly running. So once you break that seal, then the face gets wet, and then you just can't get your tape to restick to the tree. So I try my best to just pull that tape back from the cup, and then while the cup is still on the tack, if it's far enough away from the tape, you can just turn it, dump it into your bucket, and then set her back to where it was. Or you can just pull the tack out, dump your cup of sap into your bucket, and then tack your cup back onto the tree. And it works really good. And, it, like I said, it's a good way to get out and get started. It's definitely not the best way, but it does work. I've made quite a few jars of birch sap or birch syrup doing it that way, and even even the odd time nowadays, I still do it more or less for the nostalgia or from creating a video or whatever, just showing you that side of things, and that you can do it that way. But now we do things uh, a bit differently. I have a cordless drill now, and I have just a drill bit and just pretty well copper. What are they? Male by male hose fittings. And so the copper fittings, they're 1/2 inch wide, and they're just straight hose fitting, male by male hose connectors. And the drill bit that I use is a 7/16, so that way it's slightly smaller than 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch would be 8/16. And what you end up doing is pretty well the same principles as using a cup. I go out and I drill a hole into the side of the tree, and it doesn't have to be that deep. You're not The sap doesn't run in the core of the tree. You have your outer bark, then there's a small little layer of, like, I don't know, inner bark, whatever you want to call it, and then just past that is where all the sap runs up the tree, and it's uh, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch kind of a range is how deep I like to drill my taps. But anyways, I take my drill, I drill in that 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. I take my little male by male hose connector, and I take a hammer and I just slowly tap it in, and it doesn't take much. It's only a 16th of an inch bigger. And with the birch trees, when they're still alive and stuff, they're pretty soft and easy to nail into. And then a lot of times now, instead of using cups, I bring buckets with me. And the odd tree, I'll bring like an actual 5 gallon water jug. And I'll explain that here in a second. But I'll take like a 2 inch nail, like a framing nail. I'll tap that into the tree underneath the actual tree tap itself. And then my buckets that I don't use anything fancy. I don't use any stainless steel buckets or anything like that. I honestly go to like the dollar store, go into like the kids' play section, and they always have like those little plastic buckets. They're like $1.25. I'll buy like a dozen of them or whatever, and they have their own little plastic handles and stuff. And I'll just hang that on the 2 inch nail that's in the tree, and you pretty well just sit back, relax, and let it drip out. And depending on the time of year, some days it's once a day. You check your tree taps and collect all your sap. Other times it's like every couple of hours I go out because the buckets will be full. And that also depends on the tree and how healthy the tree is, and there's all sorts of stuff. You'll see some trees, they produce like amazing. And then others you go out and it's a steady drip, but it's kind of like one drip every 3 or 4 seconds. And for the trees that produce like crazy, what we have done is take like a regular old 5 gallon water jug, like those reusable jugs that you get at the water stations or at the grocery store or whatever. And we'll take like an actual half-inch water line, attach it to that half-inch hose connector that you're using as a tree tap, and we'll drape that down and actually put it inside one of those 5 gallon water jugs. And then usually either shove like a rag on the top so a bunch of bugs and stuff can't get in there, or just kind of try to tape it. Pretty well just try to cover the top up so nothing's you know well, you try to make it so nothing gets in there. I mean, you filter it when it's all said and done, anyways. And those are for the trees that, there's times where as soon as you drill into that tree, you pull the bit out and the sap just starts to run. Like it doesn't slowly pool up in the bottom of your drill bit hole and then kind of drip out. Like it almost squirts out at you, kind of a thing. That doesn't happen with every tree, but it does happen, and it happens actually quite a bit. But yeah, with those ones too, at least when you're doing it that way, you're not wasting a bunch of the sap. You want to collect as much as you can. I mean, it's not bad if it runs out, but I mean, if you're tapping into a tree, you might as well collect as much as you can. Otherwise, it is a little wasteful in a way, but I mean, it's not overly too bad. One thing that I'll mention too is the time of year that you tap birch trees. Uh, Again, it kind of depends on the tree and it depends on the weather that you're having. Uh, I've tapped them as early as the first week of April, and other years I haven't been able to tap any until almost the last week of April. And it all just depends on how warm your spring is, because basically what happens is you want to tap them right when the buds on the branches start to form, and that's when the tree's new year growth is starting to come in and all that good stuff. If it's too early in season, you'll have a dry tree. Too late in the season, and all the sugars and stuff that were going up that are just not going to be there. And I'm actually not too sure what would happen if you tapped it in the summer, kind of a thing, or like a couple weeks past the prime, because I get what I get when I get it, and then there's just a certain time where I just kind of stop, basically. Once as the leaves start to grow, kind of a thing. So you have like it's about a 3 to 4 week window that you have to tap them. So yeah, I actually don't know what would happen in the summer. Maybe this summer I'll test that out. I'll just go to one of the trees in the yard here in case I accidentally kill it or whatever, and just kind of see what happens. But yeah, it's a really cool, unique process. Once as I collect maybe about 10 to 15 gallons of birch sap, uh, what I end up doing is I take an empty 5 gallon bucket and I use either cheesecloth, game bags, or a brand new clean pillowcase, and I put it over the top, and then I kind of drape it over the sides there too, so it kind of has something to hold on to. And I'll take my collection buckets, and usually you get the odd leaf or stick or ant, moth, whatever. I mean, you're out in the bush, right? So you get all sorts of floaties and junk in there. And what I do is I'll just pour it over top of the cheesecloth or the game bags or pillowcase, whatever it is that you're using. And that's what I use as a filter. Uh, I mean, really, whatever's in there, I don't think it's gonna hurt you at all. I've been doing it for years and nothing's ever really affected me, right? So I mainly just use the filter just to get rid of all the floaties. because there is sticks and ants and stuff, and it's, you know, where you don't want that in your syrup basically. And also, don't be afraid to take a swig of the birch water itself or the birch sap. Uh, it it's a very, very, very lightly sweetened water, and it almost tastes like a spring water kind of a thing. Uh, it is just, I don't know how to describe it other than just like extremely refreshing. It feels like it hydrates you. Just be careful that you don't drink too much of it because it can be used as a laxative as well. I found that out the hard way a few years ago when I first got into this. When I was tapping my trees during the day, the sun would come out and it'd be nice and hot and warm. And by about 10 a.m. ish, around there, it was hot enough where the trees would start to tap or start to run. And then as the sun would go down, it was getting cold, and they would kind of stop producing around like about 8 p.m. kind of a thing. And then overnight, it would get down to freezing, and well, somewhat freezing, like -1 kind of a thing. So it was cold enough where the trees would stop producing, but then you'd get this nice little layer of ice right on top of my red solo cups. So in the morning, I'd go out, I'd pull that piece of ice off, toss that into the trees, and the first probably 3 or 4 big solo cups right full of the brim, I'd grab that and I would just down it. Well, after doing that every day for about a week, I ran into some troubles, and yeah, the bush there, it got a present from me. So you just gotta be careful with that. But I think that's the only real downfall of drinking too much. Plus, while you're out there and you're tapping all your trees and stuff, birch is what chaga grows on. So if you happen to find some chaga growing on the birch trees, it's a great thing to harvest from the birch as well. And then chaga, it makes absolutely amazing tea and powders and stuff. And then with the whole thing of birch trees too, it's one of those like miracle trees, miracle plants, whatever you want to call it, kind of a thing where there's so many great health benefits and stuff. You should really kind of look it up. I don't really know it off the top of my head, and I don't want to just kind of spitball things at you. I usually get a lot of things wrong. So if you want the actual true solid facts, just Google, benefits of chaga, benefits of birch water, and, birch syrup and all that good stuff. But anyways, back to making birch syrup. Once as I filter it, basically what I got is one of those Camp Chef dual burner propane cooktop stoves, and I take just a great big huge soup pot, and I fill it pretty well right to the brim with, I don't know how much that holds, probably 3 gallons or so of birch water, and I put it on not exactly full blast, because I think if you heat it up too fast, it almost burns the sugar kind of a thing. So instead of like cranking the heat on it, I'll put it at like whatever, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll put it at like a 7 kind of a thing. And then that way you still get a nice slow rolling boil, and it just steams for hours and hours and hours. And it takes a long time because you're boiling off. Like if you have 5 gallons of birch sap, you might get, I don't know, maybe a cup of syrup. Maybe. And again, that depends on the time of year. At the very beginning, it's like 99.99% water. And when you get kind of closer to the end of the season, it'll be, instead of 99.99% water, it'll be like 97.5% water. Real scientific numbers for you. So at the nearing the end, there's a little bit more sugars that are kind of flowing up. So yeah, I just slowly cook her down, and then as it's coming down too, what I end up doing is I have my bucket of filtered water, and as the level's coming down, I just keep topping it up with fresh stuff until I don't know, I might have kind of 5 or 6 cups left, kind of a thing in the big pot, and then what I do is I transfer that into a much smaller pot, and I'll use like if I'm outside, I'll use like a small Coleman propane stove for that, and then that way, the Camp Chef, it works great when you have a great big huge pot because the flames come out real wide. Where the Coleman, it's more concentrated and it's a lot easier to control the heat and the flames and all that. So then I'll do that for the last, couple of cups kind of thing, and basically, depending on who's making the syrup, uh, if you go too much, you end up burning it. But if you don't go enough, you have pretty well slightly thick brown water that's, it is sweet, but to me, that'd be more of like a fish marinade kind of a thing and not necessarily a syrup. So, like, guys like my dad, he goes until it's pretty runny. Like, you put it into a jar or whatever, you shake it up, and it doesn't stick to the sides of the glass. And you could have boiled it down quite a bit longer, but that's the way he likes it. For me, I boil it down until I take a spoon, put the spoon into it, and when I turn it upside down, or when I tip my spoon to the side there, when the syrup kind of runs off, but then it also kind of licks the back side of the spoon and then drops, that's where I like it. So it's pretty well the same consistency of maple syrup. When you do it that long, though, you have to be very, very careful at near the end. I'll end up typically I end up just putting the burner to like a low, like from 1 to 10. I put it at 1, sometimes 2, and then pretty well just to keep it hot and keep steam coming off. Because if you boil it when it's that low, you'll the chances of you burning are extremely high, and you'll have like pretty well a week or two of work just gone. So you have to be pretty careful at the end, but as long as you have a little bit of patience, it's not that big of a deal. With us, what we end up doing is we set everything up in my little woodshed out back, and we just do our uh, sugar days or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, as a lot of times too, as one guy is in there kind of monitoring everything with the burners going and all that stuff, the other guy, they might go out every few hours and collect a bunch more of the sap. And then, yeah, you just do that for, well, typically what happens, we tap our trees, we collect water for about 3 days, and then we start to simmer it all down. And then as we're simmering it down, it's about another 3 days that we do that. And in the meantime, all of our trees are still tapped, and we still just bring in new fresh water and keep topping everything up. So with us, we end up getting quite a bit. And then pretty well, once as we get to the end, if you want to preserve your syrup, or if you just made enough just for like a couple of things of pancakes, just throw it into like a mason jar or an empty maple syrup jar or whatever. Heck, put it in a bowl or a cup if you only made, a little handful of it, kind of a thing, and throw it in your fridge. But if you're like me and every once in a while you go a little overboard and you've collected a ton of it, uh, pretty well put it into sterile mason jars and just do a water bath can with it, and it'll last you for years. Uh, whether it lasts that long because you ate it all, that's up to you. But if you don't eat it, it'll last years. And then also, when we're all said and done, uh, what I started doing probably well, once as I started drilling into the trees, I just went out to like Canadian Tire, Rona, Home Hardware, pretty well any store that sells wood dowels, and you can get them if you buy the real long ones. You can get like 4 feet of wood dowels as long as they're half inch or slightly bigger. What I'll do is I'll cut off little chunks. I'll put them in like my vise or something like that. Cut off pieces that are whatever, an inch to 2 inches long. There's no science behind it. All you're doing is when you go to your half inch tap, you pull the top out, you take your wood dowel, you put that in, and it just creates a nice seal around it, and you're tapping wood with wood. I mean, they're usually like pine or something like that, so it's not exactly birch, but whatever. It's a lot better than just pulling your taps out. And I'll be honest, there has been times where I have left a couple of trees where I just pull the tap out just to see what happens. You'll see those ones in the yard here. And I wouldn't necessarily say that you should do it, but if you happen to miss a couple, uh, my trees here at the house, they're still growing. They still seem fine. With birch, they create that, well, basically chaga. They create like their own little scab almost. So like the odd one, if you don't have a whatever you want to call it, uh, your wood tap, I guess. If you don't have that, you know, try to do something to plug the hole with. Shove some grass in it, use some tape, do something. But at the end of the day, I like I said, if there's only a couple, don't do it to every single one. But if there's only a couple, uh, you know, it's not that bad if you don't retap them, kind of a deal. And then there's also talks where people said don't tap the same trees uh more than, or wherever it was, every couple of years tap the same tree, kind of a thing. And it makes sense in a way, but there's pretty well 5 or 6 trees in my yard here that they're like my test trees. Before I go to work, whatever, I'll stop the truck, get out, grab a knife, stab it. If it starts to run, cool, my day's off, we can tap trees. And then these ones, I have tapped them every single year using the drill bit, just doing what I said here. You use your 7/16 drill bit, use your half-inch hose connectors, put a nail in the tree, hang a bucket, yada yada yada, right? And then at the end of the year, pull my tap out, grab a wood dowel, put that in, and they're still alive and they still produce every year. But I mean, if you're in a spot where there is like a ton of birch trees, then yeah, best practices are to, kind of separate the trees and which ones that you do, or just kind of maybe look at it and set up like a grid almost. This section, do it this year. This section, do it year 2. Next section over, do it year 3. Year 4, go back to your first one, kind of thing, just to kind of give them a little bit of a break. Uh, is it necessary? I honestly don't really think so, but it'll make you feel good at the end of the day. And it does seem like it should make a difference. But from what I've seen just in my yard, however, that is only like, what is it, 5 or 6 trees. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I need a bit of a bigger test pool, kind of a thing. But yeah, that's pretty well what our plans are here. Once as depends, this year I bet you it'll be about mid-April before we can tap any trees. And yeah, you'll definitely be seeing some more videos being made about that. If you're kind of in a rush and you don't want to wait, there are birch tapping videos that I have up on my YouTube channel already from the previous years. And yeah, if you guys want to check that out, just head over to YouTube, go underneath the playlist. And I'm not too sure if it's under how to or outdoor adventures playlist, but there's somewhere in there. If not, just go to the search bar up on the top. Just type in, birch or syrup, chaga, whatever, and you'll find all sorts of videos there coming up for you. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Hopefully, this helps you out and gets you all excited here for this spring. Give this a try. It's a lot of fun. It's extremely rewarding. Uh, Plus, you can kind of impress your friends by saying, "Hey, this here syrup, I made that myself," and it's pretty cool. Plus, you can take your kids out and grandparents, whatever. Anybody can go out and do it, and anybody can sit by the fire and watch the water boil. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, please hit the little like button down in the corner on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Check out a couple other videos, and maybe share a podcast or share one of our videos with your friends. I'll catch you on the next one.